Ben Carter stood in front of the big rusty doors of the old repair shop, holding a data pad that still looked too good to be true. It was his now. It really is his. He had signed the papers an hour before, given up almost all of his savings, and left with the deed to this huge alien building on the edge of Newark Tourist Station. Now that Ben thought about it, the vexery merchant who sold it to him had been strange. The old alien kept looking over his shoulder, rushing through the paperwork, and almost shoving the access codes into Ben's hands. The vexery shook his head quickly and said the place was clean, fully registered, and had no problems at all when Ben asked if there was anything he should know about it. Then he took his things and got on the next bus off the station. Ben didn't care. People were strange at times. Especially aliens. It's possible that the man just wanted to retire and didn't care about getting a better deal. Ben's next task was to figure out what to do with a repair shop that was meant for animals twice his size. The main doors creaked open, revealing a huge workshop that could fit 20 ships. The lights above turned on by themselves, lighting up rows of empty work bays, old tool racks, and equipment that would take him months to figure out. The air smelled like metal, ozone, and something else he couldn't quite put his finger on. Maybe it's age. Records from the station show that the facility had been closed for at least 10 years. Ben walked through the main bay, and the sound of his footsteps echoed in the empty space. This was going to be a new beginning for him. He needed this after everything that happened on Earth. The failed business, the debts, and the divorce. A place where he could use his hands to work, make something real, and maybe even hire some people in the future. Not a lot of frills. Just honest work fixing the ships that came through the station. He spent the first few hours counting things. Most of the alien tools didn't work for him because they were made for vexery appendages or Krellian claws. But there was enough standard gear for him to get it to work. The workshop was built well. Strong building, good ventilation systems, and even some old fabrication units that might still work if they are fixed. Ben was feeling good by noon. The place was rough, but he could handle it. He had dealt with worse problems. At that point, his scanner started to act weird. Ben was checking the building's structural integrity to make sure it wouldn't fall on him when his handheld device started picking up strange energy signals. Readings that aren't dangerous, just strange. Power going where it shouldn't be. The building's main systems were down, except for basic life support. So, where was all that power going? He followed the readings deeper into the building, past the workshop areas and into areas that were marked as storage. With each corridor, the energy signature got stronger. Finally, Ben was in the deepest part of the building, standing in front of a huge blast door that he hadn't seen before. This door was different from the others. More weighty. It looks like it came from the military. It wasn't covered in dust like everything else in the building. Someone had taken care of this door and made sure it worked. The metal had old symbols carved into it that were faded but still there. Ben remembered them from history downloads he had done years ago. The insignia of the Galactic Navy. Old ones. Very old. His hand was hovering over the controls for the door. A smart person would probably call station security, tell them what they found, and make sure everything was above board. But Ben had learned the hard way that station security didn't always help people like him. Working-class people who were trying to make an honest living often got caught up in rules and red tape that didn't seem to affect the rich or well-connected. Also, this was now his property. Bought legally. He owned whatever was behind this door. Ben pushed the access panel. He was surprised that it accepted his new owner credentials right away. The blast door split in half with a hiss as the pressure equalized. This revealed an elevator shaft that went straight down into the dark. The elevator car was parked and the lights were blinking green to show that it was ready to go. A small screen showed the depth, 3 kilometers straight into the asteroid that Newark Tourist Station was built into. Ben didn't know that the building went that far down. The surface plans he got didn't show anything about the lower levels. He had a gut feeling that this was the time to be careful and think things through. But now he was very curious. What could be 3 kilometers down that needed its own power supply and a military-grade blast door? Ben got on the elevator and pushed the button for the bottom floor. It took a long time to go down. 3 full minutes of seeing depth markers move across the screen. The changes in pressure made his ears pop twice. The elevator was old but in good shape. It moved smoothly on rails that didn't show any signs of wear. Someone had been looking after this equipment. Not long ago. Ben's heart was racing when the elevator finally slowed down. The doors opened with a soft chime that seemed way too happy for the situation. Ben forgot how to breathe when he saw what was on the other side. The cave looked like something out of a dream. No, not a cave. A hangar. A military hangar carved into solid rock. It was so big that even with the emergency lights on when he got there, the walls on the other side were lost in shadow. Ships filled that impossible space, arranged in perfect rows. Ships of war. A lot of them. Ben took a shaky step forward and then another. The fighter craft were closest to him. They looked sleek and deadly even when they were quiet. Beyond them, bigger ships. Cruisers with weapons still on board. And even further back, there were dreadnoughts the size of city blocks that took up the whole space like sleeping giants. The same symbol was on the hull of every ship. A stylized star pattern that Ben knew from history files. The Empire of Corvani. A civilization that disappeared 300 years ago, leaving behind only ruins and questions that were never answered. He was shaking as he took out his scanner. The device went completely nuts, with numbers scrolling so quickly that they were impossible to read and alert messages going off one after the other. Ben put it in appraisal mode, which is what dealers do to figure out how much a ship is worth. The scanner worked for 30 seconds before giving me an error message. The total value was too high for it to be able to calculate. Ben set it to show anyway no matter what the consequences were. He felt weak in the knees when he saw the number, 2.3 trillion credits. He bought a garage for 30,000 credits and found a fleet that was worth more than some planets. Ben walked between the ships as if he were in a dream. The only sound in this cathedral of silent machines was his work boots echoing on the polished floor. Every ship he passed was spotless. There wasn't a speck of dust or rust on their hulls. They looked like they were ready to fly the next day. It seemed like they had been waiting. He touched the closest fighter ship with his hand. The metal felt cool under his hand and was smooth and well kept. These weren't abandoned things or things that could be salvaged. These were fully functional warships that had been hidden away in the dark for 300 years. Ben brought up all the information he had about the Corvani Empire on his data pad. Before humans even reached the stars, they were one of the most powerful groups in this area. A lot of land, a strong military and cutting-edge technology. Then one day they just disappeared. At the same time all the colonies went dark. No calls for help, no explanation and no survivors ever found. There was still disagreement among galactic historians about what happened. Plague, an accident in another dimension, and a mass evacuation to places unknown. No one really knew. But it looks like they had hidden a backup fleet before whatever happened. Ben had just bought the land where it was hidden. He was looking at the dark matter containment pods on one of the cruisers when the voice spoke. Identification needed. Ben turned around quickly, almost dropping his scanner. Blue light came from all sides and scanned him from head to toe. His heart raced in his chest. The voice continued, unauthorized personnel detected, with no emotion. Starting security procedures. Wait, Ben yelled. I own this place. I just got it. Legal purchase, registered with the station. The scanning got worse. Ben's skin felt prickly under the beams of energy. In the dark, something mechanical was moving and heavy footsteps were getting closer. He backed up against the fighter craft, wishing he had brought any kind of weapon. Then the scanning stopped all of a sudden. Confirmed by records. 3 hours and 7 minutes ago, the property transfer was recorded. Ben Carter, a civilian on Earth, is the legal owner. The status has been changed. The voice changed a little bit and sounded less robotic. Hello, Ben Carter. I am Warden 7, an AI that has been given the job of taking care of Reserve Fleet Omega. Ben let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. You scared the hell out of me. Sorry? When new life signs are found, security protocols kick in automatically. In 293 years, 4 months and 16 days, you are the first person to enter this building. Almost 3 centuries, Ben said as he looked at the clean ships. How is everything still in such great shape? Protocols for ongoing maintenance, Warden 7 said. A holographic interface appeared in the air, displaying technical readouts. This building runs on automated systems. Repair drones work on all ships on a rotating schedule. The cores of dark matter stay stable. All ships are always ready to go. Ben walked toward the middle of the hangar to try to understand this. What? Why keep all this going if the Corvani are no longer here? Original programming says that the fleet must be ready until they get official stand-down orders. There have been no such orders sent. So I will keep doing my job. That made me feel a little sad. An AI kept an Empire's fleet in good shape even though it would never come back, just because no one told it to stop. Ben brought himself back to reality. Warden 7, what exactly is down here? How many ships are there? The holographic display grew bigger, showing the whole hangar layout. Reserve Fleet Omega has 473 ships in it. There are 72 light fighters. 141 medium-sized fighters. There are 83 heavy assault ships. 94 different kinds of cruisers. 51 destroyers. 24 battle cruisers, and 8 capital ships of the Dreadnought class. Ben's head was spinning. And they all work? They could really fly? Yes. All ships are ready for battle 97 to 99% of the time. Minor repairs could get everything working again in less than 48 hours. What do they cost? Ben asked, even though his scanner had already given him a number that didn't quite make sense to him. Warden 7 thought for a moment. Current market value based on materials, technology, and strategic value, about 2.3 trillion galactic standard credits. But the real value may be much higher because Corvani engineering has a lot of historical importance and has made a lot of progress in technology. Ben sat on the floor. He just sat down because his legs couldn't hold him up anymore. 2 trillion credits. Maybe even more. He had more money than most people could ever dream of having in 10 lifetimes. Under galactic salvage law, Warden 7 said, any military property that is found on legally owned land becomes the property of the landholder. Ben Carter, as the registered owner of this facility, you now own all of the ships and equipment. Mine, Ben said again, this time without thinking. I own a fleet worth trillions because I bought a cheap garage. That's right. Ben began to laugh. He couldn't stop himself. The silliness was too much. He had used up all of his credit to buy a rundown repair shop, hoping to make a little money. Instead, he had unintentionally become one of the richest people in known space. The laughter stopped when people realized what was going on. People knew about this kind of wealth. That vexery merchant must have known something was wrong down here. He must have. He might have been too scared to claim it himself, or he might not have been legally allowed to own military salvage. But he knew, and he sold the property quickly so that no one could ask questions. How long did it take for other people to find out? Warden 7, who else knows about this fleet? Facility security has not found any unauthorized scanning or surveillance. Most sensor types are blocked from reaching lower levels by surface structures. The facility's power generation, on the other hand, gives off a unique energy signature. Specialized tools might be able to find readings that are out of the ordinary. Ben thought about the readings from the scanner that had brought him here. If his cheap handheld could pick up something, then more advanced equipment could too. Can you lock the building down? Stop anyone from getting to these levels? Yes. Security systems are still working perfectly. I can close off all entrances and turn on defenses if I need to. Ben stood up, his thoughts racing. He needed some time to think about it. Time to think about what to do with a discovery that could change his life forever. Or end it if the wrong people wanted what he had found. Go ahead. Full lockdown. Nobody comes in without my permission. Understood. Starting the lockdown for security. The lights around the hangar changed from blue to amber. Ben heard huge doors closing somewhere far away. The building was locking itself up to keep its impossible secret from the galaxy above. Ben looked at the warships around him. They were ships from a dead empire that were now legally his. He wanted a new beginning, a chance to build something real. Instead, he had found something that would either make him the luckiest person in the world or the biggest target in the industry. He had a feeling he was about to find out which one. 41 hours after Ben found the fleet, things went wrong. He was in the surface workshop, trying to act normal and pretending to count the repair tools while his mind was racing with impossible choices. The door rang. At the door, Ben saw 3 people in Galactic Navy uniforms. The officer in charge asked, "Ben Carter?" She was Tertian, and the lights in the workshop made her scaled skin shine. "I am Commander Velos. We need to talk about the property you just bought." Ben's stomach dropped, but he kept his voice steady. "Of course. What do you think? We've noticed strange energy patterns coming from this building. Signatures that are typical of military-grade power systems." Commander Velos walked in without waiting for an invitation. "We need to check the security. Do you have a warrant?" Ben asked. The look on the commander's face didn't change. "We're doing a safety check that people can choose to take part in. To keep everyone on the station safe. You must want to work with station security." There it was. The stress. Not quite a threat, but close enough. Ben had played this game before. Strong people asking nicely and making it clear that saying no would have consequences. Ben said carefully, "The facility is private property. I'd rather set up any inspections through the right legal channels." For a long time, Commander Velos looked at him. "Mr. Carter, if you have nothing to hide, you shouldn't wait. We are just making sure that we follow safety rules. Then fill out the right forms and I'll be happy to help you. Through the law." The commander's jaw tightened a little. "Very good. We'll get in touch." She turned to leave but then stopped. "One more thing. If the Navy finds military salvage on private property, They have the first right to refuse it. I hope you'll remember that if you find anything interesting. They went away. Ben's hands were shaking. A hidden speaker picked up Warden 7's voice. The Galactic Navy does not have the legal right to claim salvage on land that is not theirs. That statement was not true. Yeah, Ben said quietly. But they have lawyers and warships. I have a mortgage and a dream. 6 hours later the next person came. This time, a Vexery in fancy clothes was standing next to two people who looked like they had been in the military. The Vexery's smile had too many teeth. Mr. Carter. I am Raxith and I work for the Crimson Syndicate. We help independent business owners in this field with security consulting. Raxith walked around the workshop like he owned it. Nice place. Very useful. You get what I mean when I say that. Things happen. Failures of equipment. Sad events. Ben said, I'm not interested in protection services. Oh, but you should be interested. A person alone on a frontier station with property that draws attention? Raxith thought about it and clicked his mandibles. Our standard rate is very fair. Only 30% of total sales. We make sure nothing bad happens. Ben answered, nothing bad better happen anyway. There's a reason for station security. Raxith's smile went away. Mr. Carter, station security responds to incidents. They don't stop them. Think carefully about who you want to be friends with. He dropped a chip with data on it on a workbench. Our agreement. I think you should look it over. So, they left the chip behind as a threat. Ben threw it away as soon as they left. The next morning the company reps came. 3 of them were people in suits that probably cost more than Ben's whole house. They worked for Nexus Industrial Solutions, which is one of the biggest companies in the industry that buys and sells salvage. The head of the company said to Mr. Carter, we'll be direct. And then they spread holographic contracts across Ben's workbench. We know you found something important. Our sensors picked up on the energy signature. We are ready to make a generous offer for a partnership. Ben took a quick look at the contract. At first glance the numbers looked good. 50 million credits in advance. But he was able to find the clauses hidden in the dense legal language. Nexus would be in charge of all salvage rights. Ben would get 2% of the assessed value. He would be giving up everything for a small amount of its value. Ben said, not interested. Mr. Carter, please be reasonable. You are a mechanic. You don't have the money, legal knowledge, or connections to make the most of what you've found. We're giving you wealth that will last for generations. More money than you'd make in 10 lives. By giving you something that will last 1,000 lifetimes? No, thank you. The executive's smile turned into a frown. You're making a mistake. We can take legal steps. Historical claims, safety violations, and worries about the environment. We can keep you in court for years. Use up all your credit for legal fees. I guess I should find a good lawyer then, Ben said. They left, but Ben knew they meant what they said. Companies had an endless supply of money for legal battles. That afternoon the hammer really came down. Warden 7 told him about an important legal filing. The Galactic Court had received a formal claim from the Interstellar Commerce Guild. They said that since they were owed money by the old Corvani Empire, any Corvani assets that were found belonged to them. They had already asked for an emergency injunction to stop Ben from owning anything until a full hearing could be held. Ben read the filing twice and his chest felt tight. The guild was huge and it had resources that made Nexus look small. Their lawyers could make any argument Ben could pay for look weak. When his comm unit rang, he was sitting in his workshop with his head in his hands. Number not known. When he picked up the phone, a smooth voice said, Mr. Carter. This is Torvin Michaels from the Guild's Acquisition Department. I think you know about our filing. Yes, I have seen it. Then you know where you stand. The Guild has a lot of legal history to back up creditor claims on historical assets. This will be a long and costly fight in court. One you can't win. Why call then? Ben asked with a tired voice. Because the Guild likes reasonable answers. We are ready to give you a finder's fee. 5 million credits. You leave with money, we get the salvage, and everyone is happy. Ben laughed in a bitter way. 5 million for something that is worth a lot more than that? 5 million for something you will lose in court anyway. Mr. Carter, think about it. You are just one person up against institutions that have been around for hundreds of years. Be smart. Ben hung up without saying anything. He was alone in his workshop when night fell on the station. He could see ships from 3 different groups moving into position around his building. Navy patrol boats. Ships for private security. Drones that watch over businesses. Everyone was watching and waiting for him to mess up. Analysis shows a big increase in threats, Warden 7 said, breaking the silence. Many people now know what's inside the facility. 63% chance of a forceful seizure attempt, and that number is going up. Can you protect this place if they come after it? Defensive systems are up and running. But any fighting at the station would kill a lot of civilians. 4,000 to 12,000 people are thought to have died depending on how intense the fighting was. Ben shut his eyes. That was the trick. They couldn't let him keep what was his, but they also couldn't risk the damage that attacking would cause. So they would put pressure on him, threaten him, and squeeze him until he gave up. He was only one person. A mechanic who wanted to start over. How was he supposed to fight the Navy, crime groups, huge companies, and galactic organizations all at the same time? His communication device buzzed again. A different call. Another threat is likely. But this time it was different. A woman's face appeared. It was professional but friendly. Mr. Carter? My name is Rachel Ortiz and I work for the Workers' Rights Coalition. We've been keeping an eye on your situation. We want to help if you let us. Ben looked at the screen. Why would you want to help me? Because you're standing up to people who think they can take anything they want because they have power. A lot of people out here care about that. She smiled a little. You don't feel as alone as you think. Ben felt something other than fear for the first time in 2 days. Hope maybe. The third morning is when Ben made his choice. No more running. No more fear. 7 Warden, he said, standing in the underground hangar with a quiet fleet around him. Turn on all of the defense systems. Full lockdown plan. Nobody gets in without my direct permission. Understood. Turning on the defensive perimeter. Systems that had been dormant for hundreds of years came to life all over the building. Energy shields appeared around the edges of the property. They were shimmering walls that could stop anything but the main guns of a dreadnought. Point defense turrets came out of hidden ports and used their targeting systems to look for threats. The building changed from an old garage to a fortress in a matter of minutes. Within an hour, everyone who lived near his property knew what he had done. Commander Velos was the first to answer, and her face was tight with anger on the comm screen. Mr. Carter, you just did something that was against station security. Stop using those weapons right now or we will see this as an act of aggression. I've secured my private property, Ben said, keeping his voice steady even though his heart was racing. Those defenses are only for protection. No one gets hurt unless someone tries to break in. You have thousands of civilians as hostages. If one of your systems breaks down, half of this station could die. Then no one should try to get in. Not too hard. The commander's face grew dark. You have 2 hours to do what I say. Then we do something. The call was over. Ben's hands were shaking but he didn't give up. Rachel Ortiz called a few minutes later. We're already telling people about your story, Ben. Everyone who is sick of seeing the strong take from the weak, every workers' rights group, and every independent news network. You are not the only one. Rachel, they have ships of war. They have lawyers. What do we have? We have the truth. And there are millions of working people in the galaxy who see themselves in you. Her voice was strong. Don't give up. Not yet. By noon, Ben's situation was news all over the world. There was a mix of coverage. Some news outlets said he was a dangerous radical who had taken a station hostage. Some people said something else. Working-class human stands against institutional theft, read one headline. Only the rich can use salvage law, said another. Support came in from places they didn't expect. Small business owners who had been hurt by big companies. Salvage crews who had valuable finds taken from them through legal trickery. People who had spent their whole lives watching the rich take what they wanted. We're with you, Ben, said a mining crew on Kepler Station. Don't let them take what's yours. The Vexery Merchant Guild said, salvage law must protect everyone equally or it protects no one. Even people from other countries came together. A freighter captain said, one of us finally said enough. Let's see if the law means anything. But the stress kept getting worse. On the same day, Nexus Industrial Solutions filed 3 lawsuits. Breaking safety rules. Concerns about the environment. Claims that Ben didn't have the right licenses for military gear. Each lawsuit was meant to take away his money and will to fight. The Crimson Syndicate took action in a more direct way. 2 of their ships tried to dock at the maintenance ports of his facility. The point defense systems on Warden 7 locked on right away. Warning, the AI said on open channels. Attempt to dock without permission detected. Leave right away or we will use defensive measures. The Syndicate ships pulled back but Raxith sent a message just for them. You just made an enemy you can't afford, Carter. We remember things for a long time. The Galactic Navy sent more ships. There are now 6 ships around the building. Commander Velos gave an ultimatum. 24 hours to give up control of the facility for an inspection. After that, we will board by force to keep the station safe. Ben was alone in his workshop that night and wondered if he had made a big mistake. Perhaps he should have accepted one of the offers. He had never thought he would have 5 million credits. He could have left and started over somewhere else. But every time he thought about giving up, he remembered why he had left Earth in the first place. The way powerful people had ruined his business by making rules that they helped write. The way lawyers had destroyed everything he'd worked for while men in expensive suits made money. He had promised himself that he would never do it again. This was the moment he said he'd never do it again. The Galactic Council met in an emergency session 72 hours after Ben's lockdown started. The pressure from working-class people on many worlds had forced them to act. They could no longer ignore what was going on. They asked Ben to speak to them. He almost laughed when he got the invitation. The Council of the Galaxy. People from hundreds of worlds, species that had been civilized long before humans lived in caves. And they wanted to hear from him, a mechanic from Earth who had gotten involved in something bigger than himself. Rachel helped him get ready, but she kept it simple. Just be honest. That's all you need. The hearing was shown all over the galaxy. Ben stood in his workshop, still wearing his dirty coveralls, and looked at the holographic gathering of the most powerful beings in all of space. Senators, business leaders, and military leaders were all watching him. Members of the council, Ben said, his voice rough but clear. I'm not a politician. I'm not a lawyer. I bought a garage and found something I didn't expect under it. He stopped to look at the people who had gathered. Some are hostile. Some are curious. A few of them were kind. I did what the law said. I bought land in a legal way. I found abandoned things on that property. That means those assets belong to me according to galactic salvage law. I don't agree with that. That's how the law says it should be. A senator from Tertian spoke up. The law wasn't meant to handle discoveries of this size. Then change the law, Ben said without any other words. But you can't change it after the fact just because you don't like the result. That's not fair. That's just power making a choice. He took a breath and felt the weight of billions of people watching. I'm not asking for special treatment. I don't want pity or charity. The law should be applied fairly, just like it would be if a senator, a business, or anyone else had found this out. If salvage rights don't protect people like me, then they aren't rights at all. They're just perks for people who already have power. There was no sound in the chamber. Ben went on, so I'm standing my ground. Not because I'm brave. Because I'm sick of running. I'm sick of seeing people like me get pushed around by people with better lawyers and bigger ships. The law says that this is mine. The law either means something or it doesn't. He looked straight into the camera that was sending his words across the galaxy. I bought a garage. I found a group of ships. Now that they can, everyone wants to take it. Because they are strong and I am not. Because they believe one mechanic won't be able to handle them. His voice got harder. They're wrong. The show was over. Ben sat down hard, tired, scared, and strangely calm all at once. Now it was up to the galaxy. The law either protected everyone or no one. Ben had said what he needed to say, no matter what. 6 days later, the Galactic Supreme Court made its decision. Rachel called while Ben was in his workshop fixing an old alien lift system by replacing a worn hydraulic line. Her face on the screen was glowing. Ben. We won. His wrench slipped and fell to the floor. What? The court ruled in your favor. Galactic salvage law gives you full protection. You own the fleet by law. It has been shown that salvage rights apply to everyone, no matter what species they are, how much money they have, or how valuable the find is. Rachel's voice broke a little. You did it. You really did it. Ben sat down on a tool chest and his legs suddenly felt weak. They can't appeal? They can try, but the decision is set in stone. The opinion was written by Chief Justice Theron herself. 23 pages about how the law should be applied equally and how power doesn't give people special rights. Rachel laughed. Ben, you just changed the law in the whole galaxy. From now on, every salvage case will mention Carter V., the Interstellar Commerce Guild. He could hear noise outside. Moving ships. The Navy ships that had been around his building for days were finally leaving. The siege was done. Within a few hours the offers started coming in again. But this time they were not the same. Offers that are real. Offers that are fair. Companies that want to rent ships at market rates. Planetary governments asking to buy ships for their military. The Galactic Navy even sent a formal proposal, saying they were sorry for how they had acted before and asking to talk things over in good faith. Ben looked at the numbers that were moving across his datapad. Any one of these deals would make him unimaginably rich. He could sell everything tomorrow, buy a perfect world, and never have to work again. But that night, when Ben was alone in the underground hangar with the quiet fleet, he realized he didn't want that. He thought about the threats Commander Velos had made. The Crimson Syndicate's threats. Nexus Industrial and their team of lawyers. They all thought they could get what they wanted because that's how the galaxy had always worked. The strong took from the weak and the law changed to fit them. Might be time to break that pattern. The first thing Ben did the next morning was call Rachel. I need your help with something. Big thing. 2 weeks later, Ben held another press conference that made headlines around the world. He stood in front of the huge hangar doors with cameras from 100 news networks pointed at him. For the first time, some of the fleet was visible behind him. A sign of trust and openness. Ben started by saying, I've made some choices about what to do with the Corvani fleet. First, I'm giving 236 ships to start the Frontier Defense Coalition. These ships will go to colony worlds and frontier settlements that can't afford to protect themselves properly. Places that pirates have attacked and the Navy has ignored because they aren't rich or important enough to matter. There were murmurs among the journalists who had gathered. That was almost half of the fleet, worth trillions, just given away. The Galactic Navy and approved planetary defense forces will rent the rest of the ships at fair market rates. Not for sale. Rented. With contracts that say I get my property back if the terms are broken. I'm in charge. Ben stopped for a moment to make sure that every camera caught what he was about to say. The money from those leases will go toward something else. I'm turning this building into the biggest independent repair and training center in the industry. We will hire mechanics, engineers, and technicians of all kinds. But we're giving people from working-class backgrounds first priority. People who know what it's like to have problems. People who have been told they aren't good enough because they don't have the right family name or the right connections. He stared directly at the cameras. A lot of people stood by me when powerful people wanted to take what was mine. People who work, own small businesses, or have been pushed around their whole lives. This is for them. This is to show that we can make something important when we stand together and don't give up. At the end of the press conference, hundreds of questions were shouted at once. Ben answered what he could, but mostly he just felt better. He had made his decision. It took months for the facility to change. Warden 7 oversaw the huge renovation project, telling construction drones and hired workers how to make the surface structures bigger. The old workshop turned into the office. New bays were added, each with tools for fixing ships from many different cultures. Classrooms for training. Places for students and staff to live. A cafeteria that could serve 500 people. News networks covered the ceremonies that took place when the first ships Ben gave to frontier colonies set sail. 3 cruisers came to a mining colony on the edge of Vexery space, and the people there cried with joy. A group of fighters came to a human settlement that had lost 16 people to pirate attacks and held a parade. There were a lot of job applications from all over the galaxy. Ben and Rachel went over them together, looking for people who had skills and a good heart rather than just fancy credentials. A Krellian mechanic who had been blacklisted by companies for trying to start a union. An engineer who taught herself how to work on starship systems while working 3 jobs to support her family. A young Tertian who had grown up poor but was good at figuring out how alien technology worked. He hired all of them. The facility officially opened again 6 months after the court's decision. It was called the Carter Training Center. Ben didn't like the name, but Rachel wouldn't let him change it. People need to know what this place stands for. What you stand for. On the first day, Ben stood in the main workshop and watched 247 students from 36 different species learn their trades. The air smelled like welding flux, machine oil, and ozone. Actual work. Work that is honest. A young woman came up to him, nervous but determined. She couldn't have been older than 20. Mr. Carter? I just wanted to say thanks. I sent applications to 12 other training programs. They all turned me down because I didn't have any experience. You let me try. Ben smiled because he remembered how hard it was for him when he was her age. Do your best. Get as much knowledge as you can. And one day when someone else needs a break, you give them one too. That's how we make things better. She nodded seriously and went back to her desk. As the day went on, Ben walked around the facility, checking on classes, answering questions, and sometimes getting his hands dirty to help with a repair that was especially hard. This felt good. He didn't want to sit in an office counting credits. He wanted to work with people who shared his values. That night, he went back to the underground hangar one last time. The other ships were in their rows ready to go, but they weren't hidden anymore. They had kept their secret for 300 years. Now they were used to keep people safe who needed it. Hey, Warden 7, Ben said to the AI that was always there. Report on the status. All systems are working normally. Leased ships are working within the expected range. The training center is full. 18% more than the first estimates for revenue. Okay. Ben looked at the ships, which were the remains of a lost civilization that he was now in charge of. You've been in charge of this fleet for almost 300 years. Doing your job even when everyone who told you to do it was gone. That's something. I'm just doing what my programming tells me to do. Maybe. But you could have let everything go bad. Could have stopped. You didn't? Ben smiled a little. Me neither. He rode the elevator back up to the surface, leaving the fleet in the care of its guardian. There were still a lot of strong people in the galaxy who took what they wanted. Still full of corruption, injustice, and systems that keep the rich on top. Ben couldn't fix all of that. But he had shown something important. He had shown that one person standing up for what they believe in can make a difference. That the law meant something when people were brave enough to follow it. That working people could stand up to institutions that seemed unbeatable if they helped each other. Another message came through on his comm unit. A colony world asking for help with a broken water reclamation system. A simple but important repair job. Ben pulled up the plans and started to think about how to fix the problem. He was still a mechanic at heart. Still liked working with his hands more than going to meetings. Some things were worth more than credits. More valuable than power, status, or comfort. Respect. Fairness. Just standing up and saying enough is all it takes. Ben had found a fleet worth trillions of dollars hidden under a cheap garage. But what he had built with it, a community, a purpose, and proof that regular people mattered, was worth more. That was worth everything.